Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Diane Ellis, and I am the Director of Legal Services at Safe Berks, as well as the Chair of the Berks County STOP Coordinating Team. We meet on a quarterly basis as a requirement under the STOP grant that Berks County receives. The STOP grants are received through the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency from the U.S. Department of Justice and are designed to strengthen and develop collaborative efforts between the courts, law enforcement, the district attorney's office, and victim services to combat domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. Today, we have invited to speak to the County STOP team the 3 judicial candidates running for 2 available positions for Judge of the Court of Common Pleas of Berks County in the upcoming May 16th primary election. So we're going to start with some introductory remarks. Let's begin. Candidates, what is it about your qualifications that sets you apart from the other 2 candidates when it pertains to your ability to address issues involving domestic or sexual violence or stalking? We're going to begin with Attorney Jill Scheidt.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you for the opportunity to address the group. I think these opportunities are important in today's day and age where we really don't have reporters anymore. We don't have a locally owned newspaper. How we get our message out is very limited. My qualifications are this. I've been licensed to practice since 1992. I went to Penn State, Villanova Law School. I have extensive trial experience in all areas of the law. In my criminal cases and my family cases, which both have been extensive, I have met many victims and perpetrators of sexual and domestic violence. It is a systemic problem in my custody, PFA, divorce, and criminal practice. I have seen firsthand how important this issue is, and I bring all of those qualifications to address that to the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Justin Boder.
Thank you very much, Diane, and thank you to the team. Thank you to Safe Berks. My name is Justin Boder. I am currently an assistant district attorney here in Berks County. I've been there for the last 12 and a half years. I started my career in the public defender's office for nearly 3 years, went to private practice, and then have been working with the DA's office ever since. What sets me apart is, I believe, that the courtroom experience and the trial experience I have in handling these types of cases. I agree with what Jill says. This is a systemic issue and a complicated issue, but one that takes many good people to do our best to combat. I'll give you an example of that as a prosecutor. So I did preliminary hearings this morning. I came home and I'm going to preliminary hearings again this afternoon. I had 3 cases this morning that were domestic cases alone, one of which involved strangulation. And I have more this afternoon. I've done murder cases involving, sadly, domestic violence. And my experience is I've worked in the system and dealt with these issues for my career as a prosecutor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Attorney Kurt Geishauser.
Thank you. In my 28 years of experience in practicing law here in Reading and in 19 other counties in the state, I've encountered all sorts of domestic violence issues. It's too numerous to mention, really. I've handled hundreds of divorces, I would say hundreds of PFAs. So I've witnessed firsthand for both from the perpetrator and the victim's perspective. I would also add that I'm the father of 5 daughters. So to me, the issue of domestic violence is very important, and prevention, I think, is the key, and education is where it begins. I think by the time it gets to us, things have gotten to the point where some drastic measures need to be taken, and I think that's the role of a judge in most cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Question number 1. Addressing and eliminating the crimes involving domestic violence, sexual violence, dating violence, and stalking on a societal level is the ultimate goal of programs funded by STOP grants. The cost of domestic violence alone in the United States is currently estimated to be in excess of $8 billion annually in medical expenses and lost work days alone. The judicial canons that govern the conduct of judges provides that judges may engage in activities to improve the law, the legal system, and the administration of justice. So as you've all just said, you all have substantial trial experience with these crimes. You all have a lot of experience with all of these issues. You've participated in the system firsthand. So where do you see that the improvement is necessary? What activities could you as a judge engage in to improve our court system in Berks County to make it more victim-centered and to ensure that convicted offenders are held accountable for their crimes? And for this one, we will begin with Justin Boder.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. I think, obviously, just because there are things you need to step back from when elected to the bench, and you mentioned the judicial canons, but in terms of education and procedure, I think that judges are an important part of that process as well. What works well, what doesn't, and I think about that. It's on a state level and also on a county level as well. I think that we look at situations where we see people coming back and forth, people not having a voice, and really just getting, for in terms of offenders, mandating treatment and having systems there. And even in cases where on the criminal side, where if people decide they don't want to testify, situations like that, that we're ensuring as a policy and a procedure method that at the very least, we're not dismissing cases until there's some treatment or things involved. So that doesn't happen unless you have organizations like Safe Berks and this team here having ideas to handle matters better, smarter, and that will address this, again, systemic issue. So as a judge, I would absolutely be proactive in addressing these issues. Because I really think that's where it all begins. We follow the rules that the legislature puts out there, but we're the ones that are, like you said, on the front lines, experience, and again, judges and the whole team of people involved have a duty, and I certainly would not balk from that. I would be part of it, an active person, to see how can we do things better to make our community safer.
Thank you. Next, could we hear from Kurt Geishauser?
Thank you, Diane. I believe, first of all, I think that the Berks County courts do a good job handling domestic cases even now. I do have ideas, however, that I think could improve things in this particular arena. My thought is a domestic violence treatment court. I know, I'm aware in Lancaster County, they have something to that effect where there is a track for domestic violence cases, which are all funneled to one judge, and he has a team in place that addresses the issues that are relevant to those cases. I also am aware that in Allegheny County, there is in fact, a domestic violence treatment court. And I think that as resources become available, I think that is something that I would like to see implemented here in Berks County with more intensive supervision for offenders and education for both the victims and the offenders. That's one area I think we could improve on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. And now if we could hear from Attorney Scheit.
And I only have 2 minutes, right, Diane?
That is correct. And I know you have thoughts about this.
I have thoughts, right. This is primarily the reason I'm running. I have a busy practice. I am doing this because I want to be in family court and I want to be in criminal court. I have a psychology degree. I sat for the GREs when I was a senior in college, and I just decided to go to law school, but I was considering getting a PhD in psychology because I wanted to be a clinician. And although I recognize judges are not social workers, we only spend about 5% of our time trying cases. 95% of cases settle, no matter what it is. Stunning statistic. And if you watch the BCTV interview that we all gave back in March, you'll hear that I have an idea that we need treatment court and family court. And we need more tools. And that requires that judges be stakeholders, just like the people on this call, the Bar Association, and anyone else who has a role. I want us to have better bridges with the mental health community. I have been very active. I'm the past president of the Bar Association. Sorry, I just heard some feedback. And I'm active in the statewide Pennsylvania Bar and the family law section. I have relationships. I have ideas. I would like us to have more tools in family court to assist not just with domestic violence, but whatever the issue is, whatever the systemic problem is that keeps people coming back to court. And it may be custody court, it may be PFA court. Diane, you and I have been in PFA court in the last month. I represented a plaintiff in one, a defendant in the other. And the judges were very creative in trying to get to the root of the problem. But what I find as a family court practitioner is I walk in and the judges say, all right, what do you think the issue is? And what do you think we should do about it? I want to see more leadership on the bench. And I understand that judges are somewhat limited, but we can have better ideas, better community awareness, and build different courts and different treatment programs. Thank you.
Sorry, Jennifer just told me I was muted. Thank you, Jill. Question number 2. Many of these crimes use or involve the use of lethal force or the threats of lethal force. Justin was just talking about strangulation that he was involved in case this morning. If you are a judge and you perceive that a victim might be putting themselves in lethal danger by refusing to testify, for example, or by withdrawing their PFA, what do you see, if anything, as your responsibility in that situation? What could you or would you be willing to do? And we'll start with Attorney Geishauser.
That's an interesting question, and certainly there are constitutional questions that might be involved in requirements. Say, for instance, that a victim consult with some domestic violence counselor before he or she would decide to withdraw a PFA or refuse to testify. I think as a judge, it would be part of your duties to ensure that that the victim is not being improperly influenced in making his or her decision whether to go forward, whether it be a criminal case or a PFA case. It is, I'm sure, part of the domestic violence epidemic that the percentage of victims that eventually end up going back to the perpetrator of the abuse in the relationship down the road is significant. And I think that we have to ensure that the victim is aware of her options, and that and I think Safe Berks provides an excellent opportunity for those victims in these situations, so that they're not left with so they're not relying on the perpetrator to provide housing and economic resources, and they see that as their only option. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Attorney Scheit?
Thank you. I can tell you what I'll do, because I do it in my practice. I've had to do suicide interventions. I've had to call CYS. I've had to ask permission sometimes from my family to call some of their family members. When I am concerned that someone is in danger and perhaps being manipulated, making a choice that is not in his or her best interest, I act. Now, as a judge, we are restricted by the judicial canons, but I can tell you, in my experience as a lawyer, I have had people in my office, sometimes in a very first interview, people who are completely unknown to me, tell me that they threaten self-harm, or I have identified that domestic violence is going on in the house. I have pivoted and said, we need to talk about what's going on in your house right now, and we need to address it. And what does that look like? I have called some of my friends who are physicians. I have called psychiatrist friends, and I've said, help me, because I have a person in crisis in front of me, and they came in to see me about a divorce or something else, or social security disability, and told me he or she sat on the train tracks behind her house last night and wanted to kill herself, or is the victim of domestic violence. I have acted. I will not ignore it. I will call who I need to call. I will educate myself as to the limitations as a judge, but I will involve other people. This is very serious. This is life or death. I have spoken to law school deans about this, because not 1 minute of my legal training was spent on representing real people in crisis. And many people in family court and civil court, and criminal court, are in crisis. And we need to do something to help them. So I will continue on the bench to be the same person I am as a lawyer, and immerse myself and learn as much as I can and make more relationships to protect people who need being protected, whether they are adults, children, pets, you name it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next, Attorney Justin Boder.
Thank you very much. And I first of all just want to apologize to the other candidates and also the team. I'm here on my laptop, and of course it's not holding a charge, so I just switched to the phone. So my apologies. I just wouldn't want to make a distraction, so I turned the camera off. I think there are a lot of good points made by both Jill and Kurt, and I agree that the first step is we have to balance the rights of the accused with the rights that we have as victims and the protection of the public. I don't discount that as a judge. I believe that we are a referee. That being said, I look at the basic question here that you had mentioned about someone coming in withdrawing and it might not be in their best interest. Chances are it's also, you'd see situations where they're not making that decision in a free and impartial way. I've had many situations where I've had cases where and I think I go back to this experience being important, experience in dealing with these kind of cases and victims of these cases, which I've done hundreds, if not thousands of times. The first question is knowing how to ask the right questions and approach the victim in a way that one, to determine, are they making a free and knowing decision on that? Quite often it's not. I've had cases where someone told me they were refusing to testify, and you take the time, you kind of have the demeanor in a way that they'll open up to you, which I believe I do, and you'll find out that no, people, they've been getting calls from a third party, so there's issues there. As we know, the difference of socioeconomic issues play a huge role too. So in addition to asking the questions and making that determination, whether someone is making a knowing decision, then I think you just, again, knowing the system, knowing what things are out there, what kind of organizations are available. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with many people from Safe Berks handling these domestic cases, and I can't tell you how important they are as part of the process in just, again, being not only just kind and supportive, but giving resources for people. And like Jill said, to the fullest extent of the law, that I, as a judge, would be able to restrict someone from withdrawing a PFA, or at least slowing the process down to make sure any decision was made knowingly, intelligently. I can promise you I would certainly do that.
Thank you. Next question. The effects on children of witnessing domestic violence is also catastrophic for our society. Children who witness domestic violence are far more likely to either abuse their own partners or to become victims themselves as adults. These children may even put themselves in harm's way attempting to intervene to protect an abused parent. Would you, as a judge, be willing to list the children as protected persons in a PFA and prevent the abusive parent from having any contact with them, even if they were not the direct target of the abuse? And if so, under what circumstances? And we'll begin with Attorney Scheidt.
The answer is yes. I'm aware of some of the statistics. They're stunning to me. Most people on death row have witnessed domestic violence as children. Most women who are incarcerated have been the victim of sexual abuse. it continues. Absolutely, children need to be protected from whatever is going on in the home, even if they are not the target. There needs to be a complete break in whatever is going on in the home, be it a PFA or a custody order, because you can resolve some issues with custody orders, even if it doesn't rise to the level of granting a PFA. There needs to be a separation. There needs to be swift and early intervention. And abuse takes many forms. I don't have to tell this audience that, many forms: financial, psychological, emotional, physical, sexual. And with the advent of technology, Diane, we're joking about how here we are trying to figure out Zoom. Much younger people, no offense, we just have more opportunities for abuse over technology. So what do we do about it as judges? When we see it, whether it's in a custody case or a PFA case, we need to identify it. We need to bring in the appropriate experts, the appropriate mental health experts and advocates to help us identify. As judges, we're not in the household. We're not allowed to be. Yes, we can interview parties and we can interview children, but we need to have boots on the ground, figuring out what's the problem. Do we need a domestic violence assessment? Do we need a mental health assessment? Is there parental alienation going on? I have developed a sub-niche of concentration in parental alienation. It's a form of child abuse. We need to get to the root of the problem and absolutely protect children with the entry of court orders so that they are not with the abuser. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Justin Boder?
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry about that again. Yeah, I agree with what Jill said in terms of the trauma and how serious that is and what a serious issue that is as well, and something we need to avoid. I've been very active in the treatment courts as well. We've heard some people talk about those. I've ran the drug court in our office for the last 10 years. And one of the books that when you go to trainings, they talk about is a book called The Body Wears the Trauma. And it's really important because of the long-term effects that children are going to have. As a society, we absolutely have no greater duty than to protect our children. And I will stop at nothing to do that under the guidelines and under my ability under the law. As you know, children, whether directly abused or even be in the periphery of that abuse, that is, again, a form of physical, not only physical, mental abuse as well. And that's the most important thing for us to protect children, even more important. That's, I think, our greatest duty as a society. Certainly, I take that as my greatest duty as a prosecutor as well, and on the courts. So in addition, again, to training, to having outside agencies and people that can help, that the bottom line is the duty to do everything we can at our disposal. And, you know, as we're all aware, judges have a lot of discretion in this area of the law on how they would apply that and what would they would do. And again, asking a lot of times asking the right questions, doing so in a way that's safe and for children, that it's in a way that they feel comfortable in expressing what they saw. But yeah, absolutely. If there's any fear whatsoever, and again, it goes to the experience to understand the circumstances and get a feel from that situation, whether by what people tell you, body language, etc. All things that are important, and definitely things that I would use every tool at my disposal to protect children in these situations.
Thank you. Attorney Geishauser?
If I understand the question, Diane, the question is, would I be amenable to including children as protected people in a PFA when they, in fact, were not the subject of abuse? And my answer to that would be, I would be amenable to that addition to the protected persons. However, I would say it would be on a case-by-case basis, and I think we have to be careful about circumventing the custody process in and of itself. I'm very aware, though, this domestic violence epidemic is a cycle of abuse, and by that I mean it's a learned behavior. And I think that, you know, it's not a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, because kids learn from what you do, not what you say. And I think that that is where we have to nip the situation in the bud. And if I didn't say so already, I'm the father of 6 children, so I'm very cognizant of leading by example. And I think that's what has to be indoctrinated into all parents in raising their children to have healthy relationships as they get older. As far as judges go, I think in these kind of situations, you have to invoke common sense and realize what's going on here and what the root of the problem is. And I think that I would bring all that to the table and do whatever's necessary to try and ensure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and this goes directly to what you were saying, Mike, about having this available in Spanish. One of the goals of the STOP grant is to ensure equal access to justice for underserved populations. And in Berks County, and particularly the city of Reading, we have a large underserved Latino population, many members of whom have limited English proficiency. So what is your experience working in a second language, and what is your vision for a workplace and a courtroom that treats all participants equally with regard to language access? And I believe we're starting with Attorney Boder for this one.
Well, I would say this again, equal access to the courts and fairness and people being treated equally is absolutely tantamount to our judicial system, period. You know, in this day and age, we need to, and that's a huge issue and a huge thing about people not coming forward because they don't believe that the justice system would work for them or they don't know how. As you said, Mike brought that up, and it's because of organizations like his, organizations like the Bar Association and the courts that have to work hard each and every day to make sure people have equal access. The use of interpreters in the courtroom is one thing as well that's huge. That they need to be available at all times, and they need to be available for the purposes of interviews, not just being in court. I know, to tell you, in the DA's office, we have a number of people who are bilingual, especially with our victim witness coordinators, and we work hand in hand with them all the time. I've worked to get U visas and items like that for people who are in the system as well. So, you know, again, it's tantamount that everyone feels that they're going to be heard and without prejudice, and that the law applies equally to everybody. We cannot have a situation where there's a whole any segment of our population that feels that they cannot go to the authorities, to the police. So I believe the issue is just paying attention to things such as cultural competence and treating people with dignity and respect, regardless who they are, what language they speak, socioeconomic issues, etc. So I think we certainly know that that's an issue now in the system. There's always more that can be done, but we need to do everything at our disposal to make sure everyone has equal access and everyone has access to the court system. And again, that goes back to organizations like Safe Berks through the courts and policies that we implement there. And that goes for people that don't speak the language, but that goes for any marginalized community. We talk about LGBTQ. They need to know that there's a belief of inclusion and respect, and people need to know that we will do what it takes to make sure that they're served and they're safe in these situations.
Thank you. And that leads us to Attorney Scheidt.
So many barriers to accessing justice, for sure. Many different communities are impacted, and going to court is a very scary thing. There are sometimes, even after being a lawyer for more than 30 years, I find walking into a courtroom in certain circumstances to be an intimidating, scary prospect. One of the things that I believe we should try to do as elected judges and anybody hiring people is try to hire staff that reflect the community. And the only influence a judge has in this regard is every judge gets a staff of 3, a law clerk, a judicial coordinator, and an admin person. And what I see, and I would love to have a bilingual staff member. I have before. My office was in downtown Reading. I had 2 bilingual staff members. I believe it helped me. It helped my staff members. I would love to have bilingual staff. And when I walk through the metal detectors to go into the buildings, there are some bilingual security guards, and there's a lot of communication. I wish we had more bilingual staff for instance, in the sheriff's office, because those people are on the front line. The judges aren't. We're up on the bench. So what do? We continue to try to find people who will reflect the community in which we live. And I am familiar with the community and the challenges it faces. I have served on boards where we supported members of the Reading School District and others, and I have attended a variety of seminars. And I would love to have bilingual staff. Not there yet, but that's the plan.
Thank you. So the next question echoes what the 3 of you said in your answers about how equal access to the courts for everyone. One of the other underserved populations for whom we are attempting to improve the response of the court system through this particular grant is older adults. These victims often have substantial mobility issues and other health concerns, and it makes it extremely difficult for them to physically participate in the system. What accommodations would you be willing to make it easier for older adults to access the system? And we're starting with Mr. Geishauser.
Well, I certainly believe that technology lends itself to that kind of access to older individuals with mobilization problems. For instance, a Zoom call as we're on right now. I also believe that I suppose that we can't necessarily take our show to them, but I think that they, in fact, I have had situations where I've had to go to nursing homes to visit with clients and have documents signed and things like that. But I think that this technology that we have available through even over the telephone, I think would be a way that we can make better access for those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. And Attorney Scheidt.
This issue, it has become more and more apparent to me in my practice over the past few years. This concept, we call it gray divorce, the older people who are entering the system perhaps for the first time. Tech isn't, they're not affluent in tech. Most people, especially if you've been retired for a while. I know if all of a sudden I stopped working and in 6 months, I'd probably be completely obsolete because things change so rapidly. So in my practice right now, I have a fair number of older clients who have mobility issues. I have to make accommodations, and what comes with some of those older clients isn't just what we see on the surface of mobility issues and lack of tech either. I mean, not everybody has the internet. It's not in every home. One of the other issues is how much they're able to participate, and perhaps they have some dementia symptoms or something. And what I have to do, again, back to my assessment of individuals in my practice, and I would do from the bench, is assess, where are we? How did we get here? What accommodation does this particular person need? Does this person need to have a guardian appointed? That happens. I have cases right now where I have elderly clients who are going through a divorce, And there's a whole set of rules about this. I am no psychologist. I can't diagnose people, but I have to make referrals. I have to get assessments before I can even continue my representation. And I would have to do that from the bench too. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Boder?
Thank you. I think a lot of the same things I said about what we need to do, extra work to protect children, it applies the same way with older adults as well. Access to justice. And again, we talk about technology, and I think that's a starting point as well. We do so many more proceedings now that post-COVID that virtually. And again, there's always balancing acts, and I don't discount that in terms of being fair to all parties. But I do believe that that's one major way, the technology. I think it also has to do with collaboration between organizations. I think this group here is a great example of it. You know, I'm part of other groups. We talk groups with probation officers, attorneys, et cetera, treatment court. We do that. We also do it in Berks SOS. So I think figuring out what organizations are there that can provide the help, because a lot of times, even when we're in one organization, the DA's office a lot of times doesn't know all the things that different agencies like aging and other offices can do for people who are at risk. I agree with what Jill said too. I mean, I don't think we just can't be shy or hold back in terms of appointing a guardian if it's necessary. It goes back to training as well, in addition to the collaboration with the police in terms of, again, asking the right questions, knowing what signs to look for of abuse. Because I think one of the biggest things with adults and also children is you're not going to get the verbal cues quite often that will tell you what the abuse is, but being able to know what to look for in terms of demeanor, body language, etc. But I think it's not an easy answer. The best way to access justice for all parties, regardless of age, regardless of all these other factors, but it takes a lot of people with that goal in mind to come up with solutions that between those organizations to make that happen. So again, I think we just have to look at all things that come into play in front of us and figure out how we get to that from point A to point B. Technology is a great way, but I'm sure there's other ways as well with collaboration and under the law.
Well, thank you so much. I did have other questions, but I am aware that you need to leave approximately now at 12:45. So we'll give each of you 1 minute for concluding remarks, and we will start with Attorney Scheit.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. I have been a licensed lawyer since 1992. I've spent my entire career practicing here in Berks and beyond. I have extensive civil, criminal, and family court experience, including PFAs, custody, divorce, support, adoption. I've been in orphans court. I've been a local bar leader, past president. I've been active in leadership roles in the state bar and nonprofits in this community. I'm a regular speaker. I'm the only candidate to have the highest ethical rating by my peers, Martindale Hubbell. I have an AV rating. I'm very proud of that. The attributes that I have that I want judges to have are the following. I'm energetic, I'm smart, I'm courageous, I'm hardworking, I'm fair, I'm experienced, I have integrity, and I have the right judicial temperament. My problem-solving ability and my interest in mental health is the reason I'm running, and I ask for your vote on May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Attorney Boder.
Thank you very much, Diane, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you here today. I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father of two. My oldest is a daughter, and I know firsthand from my work experience the issues that we're dealing with here and the risk and the danger that people are put in from the number of cases that I've handled. I am a firm believer in that character counts, that experience counts. I have the experiences, as I mentioned before, in working in these kind of cases, and it takes that kind of experience and then character to firmly and fairly address those issues. I pride myself on having great empathy, being a good listener, and giving people an area or the way that they feel that they can open up, talk, discuss these issues, and have solutions to better the situations of violence and the people themselves. I certainly don't know everything, but I know that I know what it takes to find out the answer. I know the work ethic it takes to get the job done, and I know the nuances of the law that come into play to protect, that we can utilize to protect people as well. I promise you, as an attorney, I'll never forget the experience that I've had in working in these kind of cases over the years, and I will never forget where I came from, and I will be a judge that you can be proud of. So I thank you all for your time, and I appreciate the forum to speak to you all.
Thank you. And Attorney Geishauser?
Thank you, Diane. Again, my name's Kirk Geishauser. I've been in practice for 28 years. I've encountered many different situations, and I have a diverse background in all areas of the law. Specifically to domestic violence, though, I have had a number of experiences that were really eye-opening to me. I was involved in a case in Lancaster County where a man, very troubled, mentally ill man, shot his wife point blank in front of their 9-year-old daughter. It was a very, very eye-opening experience for me. In Berks County, I had a situation where a woman was locked in her bathroom. Actually, it's not far from my house here. And the man went out to the shed, grabbed a can of gasoline, came back into the house and lit the house on fire. But for her breaking through the window to get out of that situation, she would be dead. And I have to thank Safe Berks for eventually coming to her rescue. She was really struggling afterwards. She was trying to make ends meet, living at the Econo Lodge on 422 before Safe Berks came in and gave her a safe haven, as it were. I bring a lot of experience to the table, especially in this particular arena, and I think I would be a great asset to the bench, and I would bring, first and foremost, common sense in resolving these situations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you candidates. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your views with us. And for anyone viewing this recording, please remember to cast your votes on May 16th. Thank you.